It had been a month since we had begun our full-fledged assault on the Avatar project, and we still seemed to have Advent on the defensive. Aside from pressuring some of our civilian contacts and briefly compromising our communication system, they hadn't tried to make any significant moves against us. That gave us plenty of time to continue advancing our own agendas. Our soldiers were continuing to make use of our new training facilities on a regular basis, and some of them had even started drilling on how to work together more efficiently on the battlefield. Our diplomatic efforts were also paying off, with Phoenix and Wall returning with a new recruit in tow. Apparently their diplomatic mission into Reaper territory had exceeded in winning another one of the enigmatic cannibals over to our side. I spoke with him for a short time, welcoming him aboard the Avenger, but he wasn't nearly as chatty as Dragonova tended to be. I learned that his name was Kyron Dorsha, but little else. Still, it did remind me that Advent was getting ready to crack down on our recruiting centers, so I decided to invest a large portion of our remaining funds into bringing in as many new operatives as possible, while we still had the chance. There was Denal 246, of course, the very talented field operative who had recently tipped us off during Operation Blood Valley. He was an exceptionally skilled sniper, and I was sure we'd be able to put his talents to good use. Our other recruits had less field experience, but were no less enthusiastic about joining XCOM. It was an interesting mix of mercenaries and former soldiers, all of them ready and willing to put their lives on the line to help push back against the Advent Authority. Much to my surprise, there was even one new recruit, Nathaniel Thompson, who expressly joined for the chance to be the next test subject in one of Tygan's Scilab experiments. And speaking of our resident lab rat, Naz Odeon was showing remarkable growth. It seemed like every time I checked in on him, he was developing some fantastic new power. We hadn't risked trying to test any of his abilities under battlefield conditions, but we may have leveraged his mind-controlling abilities to help bulk up our engineering team a bit. And of course, Tygan was keeping himself busy as well. He had finished chopping up that massive Berserker Queen, and for once his findings actually involved a practical use for all those bits and pieces that were left over after his power tool autopsy. He had gotten together with Lily Shen, and the two of them had apparently used the monster's artificially enhanced musculature to make some sort of organic power armor. Conceptually, it was pretty horrifying, but I'd be lying if I said I wasn't impressed by their ingenuity. Tygan was actually starting to show some remarkable out-of-the-box thinking ever since I had started giving him more leeway in the lab. His latest project involved integrating some of his new psionic tech into our training centers to make them operate more efficiently. I was still wildly uncomfortable with his methods, but I guess it was a necessary evil if I wanted to keep getting these kinds of results. Then word got back to us that Advent was finally making their move. Their peacekeeping forces began cracking down on the outlying regions where we tended to canvass for new recruits, and Don Slayer had finished coordinating with the other Chosen to improve his knowledge of our operations. It was about time to step up our own operations as well. Tygan's recent experiment with cobbling together a suit of augmented organic power armor had given him some interesting new ideas, so I designated another chunk of our rapidly waning resources to allow him to further explore some new power armor designs. I also did my best to keep our steadily growing roster of field operatives busy. We had a lot of new recruits, so I started sending them out on minor covert operations. First, I sent recruits Edward and Varnus on a supply run to retrieve some goods that had fallen off of an Advent supply truck. That in turn led us to an old abandoned settlement which proved to be a treasure trove of additional salvage. Another month had come to an end, and Advent still hadn't made any overt moves against us, although they were continuing to quietly plan behind the scenes. We received word that, disappointed by our repeated defeats, Mordena had thrown herself into her training, intent on someday wreaking bloody vengeance against us all. Even worse, Advent was starting up another wave of new propaganda, and they were attempting to recover the data they had lost during our attacks on their Avatar Project facilities. There was even word that the Elders themselves were now taking a personal interest in the growing conflict, and rumor had it that the Elders were trying to somehow improve the Chosen, stripping away their weaknesses. Advent had been quiet for weeks now, but another attack was imminent, so we only had a matter of days at best to prepare for Advent's next strike against our allies. We quickly mobilized the Avenger, returning to South America to begin construction on a new radio tower. Once that was built, we could open up a proper communication channel with the resistance cells in New Australia, pushing even deeper into Dawnslayer's territory. That's when Chiron approached me with a proposal. He had spoken with several of the other men and knew about my rocky history with Mordena. He proposed that we force a confrontation with her, to give her one more chance to turn away from the Elders. And now that I was taking a more active role in our war on Advent, I had to acknowledge that my hesitation was endangering the lives of our men. So I reluctantly agreed. Since Mordena's hideout was in Reaper territory, Chiron offered to lead the team, and I sent along Phoenix and Rhino to support the operation. Barring disaster, they would be back within a week, this time with a surefire way to force a final meeting with the elusive assassin. Meanwhile, the engineering team had finally finished excavating the vast majority of damaged rooms in the Avenger's bowels. They had uncovered another alien power coil and were already refitting it with a conventional power relay. It was good news. Now we'd be able to build even more useful facilities, like the infirmary or that shadow chamber that Tygan had been asking about. Still, I couldn't help but notice that several of the engineers, including Lily, were nowhere to be found. After poking around for a bit, I finally tracked them down in the armory, where they were just powering up some sort of mechanical monstrosity, which Lily cheerfully identified as Hunter-Killer 1. It was... well, clearly it was inspired by the Advent mech designs, but with the ability to think and operate autonomously like any of our other field operatives. It wasn't quite a true artificial intelligence, but it was leaps and bounds beyond anything I had ever thought possible. When I asked how she had accomplished this, she reluctantly admitted that she had worked closely with Tygan on the project, and that it may have involved some of his recent research into modifying and repurposing human brain tissue. I couldn't help but wonder, where in the world had Tygan and Lily found a suitable spare brain to put into this killer robot? Oh. Right. I had a lot more questions about this whole brain-in-a-killer robot situation, but our conversation was interrupted as the Avengers' alarms began to sound. Dawnslayer had tracked down our resistance camp in New Brazil, and Advent had deployed multiple waves of their heaviest new peacekeeping units to wipe the place from the map. I quickly shifted gears, heading to the crisis room to throw together a response team before it was too late. I wanted to keep our most elite troops in reserve for when we went after Mordena, but thankfully we had no shortage of other capable soldiers to fall back on. I tapped Sergeant Dome as the squad leader, with the Bear and the Beast teaming up to provide heavy support. This seemed like a good opportunity to put Captain Denal through his paces, so he took on the role of long-range support, and, at Tygan's insistence, I agreed to finally deploy Naz Odeon into battle. Still, Naz was an untested element, so I sent along our other resident psychic, Henrik, to help him ease into things. Advent had bided their time for 2 months before starting this renewed assault, so I knew they were going to be throwing some new tricks at us. I could only hope that our new tricks would be enough to keep us ahead of the curve.
Remote reconnaissance picked up heavy comms traffic from alien forces moving to attack a resistance outpost in this region, and we're the only ones with any chance of stopping them. We're heading in to lock down the area. Neutralize all hostile contacts with extreme prejudice. One of those Chosen is leading an assault on the resistance encampment in this area. Our people are doing what they can to fight back, but we need to help protect the civilians trapped nearby. There's a group of resistance soldiers hunkered down not far from your position. Move in and help fend off the attacking alien forces.
Hey, Retcon Raider here, and welcome back to episode 14. It looks like we're starting off with a Haven defense mission today, but this is the variant where the Resistance fighters actually help fight back against Advent's invasion force. I'll admit, I actually like this version of the quest a lot more than the default Haven defense missions.
Absolutely.
Those Resistance fighters can actually make the fights a lot easier. Though honestly, at this point, I'm just happy to be on another mission. Honestly, I'm just not used to having that much downtime between missions. I have been spoiled by the Long War mod.
Got it. Moving.
Alright, you know the drill. Let's get everyone on to Overwatch and keep an eye out for some enemy pods.
Got it covered. On Overwatch. I am watching.
Whoops, and there's our first chrysalids.
Maybe a flesh wound. These chrysalids seem a little smaller than I remember. Then again, it was never really their size we had to worry about. The Elders have protected it well.
There's our first Andromedan, too.
Ready to smash something.
Is that an environment suit? Maybe something that can't handle our atmosphere?
The mission could be toxic. I advise caution, Commander.
And he's got a Spectre backing him up. Advent's pulling out all the stops this time. Oh wow, that Resistance fighter just doled out 5 damage in one shot. That's pretty good for a default assault rifle. That second Resistance fighter did 5 damage too. I guess their damage output must scale regardless of what weapons it looks like they're using. That's a little deceptive, but it's definitely useful for our side. Okay, so what are we still dealing with? We've got one wounded chrysalid on the right, one entrenched Spectre on our left, and that Andromedan. I think we're going to try going big here. Let's start Naz off with a Dominate. He only gets 1 shot at this per mission. Pass or fail, he won't be able to try dominating another target. The RNG has smiled upon us. And this fight just got a whole lot easier. With the Andromedan permanently neutralized, we can now focus on taking out the other 2 enemies. We should be able to do that before the end of the turn. Since we know the Spectre can automatically neutralize one of our soldiers with a single attack, I think we're going to have to prioritize him. But he's pretty well entrenched back there, so let's take out his cover with a grenade.
Get ready for a surprise!
Alright, relatively trivial damage, but the important thing is it took out his cover. Let's go ahead and bring up Denal. I'm basically hedging my bets here that I'm going to be able to finish off the Spectre before I have to worry about being in a flanked position. We'll start off with Lightning Hands, of course. Ooh, and there's a solid 5 damage critical hit. And now we'll follow up with a normal pistol shot. Nice, just enough to finish it off.
Done.
And now we should be able to finish off that chrysalid pretty easily. It's already badly wounded. We'll let Henrik do that. Even if he triggers an enemy pod, he can use momentum to retreat again afterwards. And Henrik is flying.
The resistance team is in the clear. They're moving to help help the other survivors. There's a large group of civilians pinned down within range of your position. Sensors indicate hostile forces are closing in fast. We need to get in there before the aliens slaughter those people.
Wow, we actually cleared out that first group of civilians pretty quickly. I guess we'll move the rest of the squad up then.
Running. Already there.
There's a Muton. Geez, 7 damage. These resistance fighters are ridiculous. Okay, well, we need to move up to support that second group of civilians, and I think we'll let the Andromedan lead the charge. For those who haven't seen Andromedans before, they're kind of like Advent Grenadiers. They can fire acid grenades, they can make close-range melee attacks, but the trickiest thing about them is their durability. They've got a decent amount of armor, a high amount of health, they're immune to environmental damage. But their biggest gimmick is that they're basically 2 enemies in one. Just a quick side note, I'm pretty sure that's actually a poster of Purge Dome there. Apparently he's got a fan club. If you kill the Andromedan the first time, its armored shell reanimates as a robotic enemy. In that form, they're only capable of making melee attacks, but they leave a stream of acid behind them wherever they go, which quickly becomes an environmental hazard for your own guys. And because the pilot's dead at that point, they become immune to all mind-affecting abilities, which I think actually means that if this Andromedan dies, it will reanimate as a robotic enemy that we'll end up having to fight. So I do want to be at least a little careful with them. Alright, let's get everyone back into Overwatch and see if any more enemy pods pop up. Well, there goes the Muton. No other pods in sight, so let's keep moving up. Once again, we'll let the Andromedan lead the way. Still nothing. Well, let's keep pushing him up. I guess it still looks pretty clear, so let's bring up the rest of the squad.
Tired of waiting around. On the move. On it. No need to ask twice. I'm all over it. My senses. Scanning.
There we go. Looks like a heavy close combat pod, 1 Berserker and 2 Chrysalids. Oh, and there's another Muton. Wow. Though honestly, I'm starting to wonder if these resistance fighters even needed our help for this. And there's another Muton, but honestly, I don't think he's going to last long either. Oh, wow. We've got another Berserker on the field. Maybe they do need our help. I guess they probably would have had trouble with the Andromedan, too. Okay. The Chrysalids and the Berserker are all still clustered pretty closely together, so let's lob an acid grenade in there. I thought I covered them all, but we missed the one in the back. No big deal. Let's go ahead and move Naz up a little. He can use his Mind Slave as living cover.
Here I come.
Well, he missed, but that's fine. He's already contributed plenty. Let's see if Denal can... Oh, I would love to be able to use Face Off. I wonder if he can get close enough for it. He could probably take out both the Berserker and that wounded Chrysalid if I moved him up to the statue. But if we don't wipe out that whole pod, that would put him in a very vulnerable position. I'd better hold off on it for now. Let's see if the bear can lob his second grenade in there instead. Ah, just out of reach.
Got it covered.
And Henrik's not close enough to make a blade charge either.
No one gets by me.
Yeah, half our squad is out of range, so I guess it really does come down to Denal. I really would like to move up there and tear things up with his pistol, but for now I think we should play it safe. We'll pick off one of these targets and hope our Overwatch fire drops the rest of them. Let's go for the unwounded Chrysalid. I'm hoping it'll die when it runs through that acid cloud.
That armor's tough. All right, I'll go. Moving to Overwatch. Overwatch.
For goodness sake, another Berserker? Alright.
Not even close.
Well, we did some serious damage to that Berserker, but now we don't have a chance to drop those Chrysalids. Oh, good. Wojtek still had his Overwatch. And that takes care of one of the Berserkers. And here come the Chrysalids. This is, of course, why I had the Andromedan on point. He can tank their attacks pretty effectively.
Commander, Advent isn't backing off. They've got units in the AO that are ignoring our forces just to get a better shot at the civilians. Take those bastards down.
Hey, back off. We've only lost one civilian so far. The Resistance fighters might end up finishing this fight for us. There goes Berserker number 2. And Berserker number 3. And another Muton. Oh, hey, and we're back up. Let's see here. First, we need to clear these chrysalids. Looks like Denal's lightning hands has cooled down, so he can probably drop both of them. Huh. Or not. Well, he can probably still finish them with face-off, so let's give that a shot. Unfortunate, but we have an ample number of attacks here, so it shouldn't be a problem. We'll let the Andromedan take care of the other chrysalid. And then we'll start setting up for the inevitable wave of faceless who will start popping up in a second.
Tired of waiting around. Affirmative. Covering now.
I guess I should do something about that last Muton. I have no doubts that the Resistance fighters would drop him given another round, but I can't let them have all the fun.
On your order.
Let's go ahead and knock out his cover with our last grenade.
Frag out.
And now pretty much anyone can finish him off with a flanking shot. Come on, Purge. You're disappointing your fans. Well, let's bring up the Beast. He shouldn't have any problems at that range with his shotgun.
Okay, so I got one.
And that triggered the Faceless, so that means there are no more alien pods on the field. Henrik's our only soldier who hasn't gone yet, but I think this is a good chance for him to finally use that parry ability. We'll Blade Rush him in there, and then we'll set him on parry. Nice.
The invaders move against me.
And the Resistance totally steals our kill.
5, you secured the remaining civilians and there are no other hostile contacts on the scope. Good work out there.
That definitely went pretty smoothly. The only downside is we don't actually get to keep that Andromedan.
All Advent gene therapy clinics will be closed tomorrow for equipment upgrades. Initial reports that the suspension of services were the result of dissident activity have been dismissed as radical propaganda.
Honestly, I was kind of debating turning on the Andromedan towards the last couple of turns there. If you end a match with an enemy dominated, not only do you not get the kill, you don't even get the corpse. That's something that's fixed in the Long War mod, but it's still a problem in the base game.
One by one, we're evening up the score, Commander. Good work out there.
And no promotions. That's a bummer. Oh well, let's move on. Operation Heavy Wolf had been a rousing success in every possible way. Despite Advent's best efforts, our squad had handily dispatched the best they could throw at us. A single civilian had been killed during the fray, but we had made Advent fight tooth and nail for even that small victory. Naz had also performed quite admirably, leveraging those strange new powers of his with remarkable effectiveness. It was just a shame that we hadn't been able to keep that Andromedan he'd managed to dominate during the battle. There just hadn't been enough room for it on the Sky Ranger. The men had apparently tried to tie it to the landing struts or something, but, well, Let's just say it didn't make it back to the Avenger in one piece. Content in the knowledge that Advent had once again been sent packing, we quickly turned our attention back to expanding our area of influence. Our engineering team completed the radio tower in New Chile, which secured our hold in South America and opened the way to New Australia. We didn't waste any time, quickly putting our ever-expanding support network to use as we established multiple contracts with resistance cells in both New Australia and New Indonesia. The groups there made some rather intriguing offers. Apparently they had an extensive network of double agents scattered throughout the ranks of the Advent peacekeeping teams. That was something we'd be able to take advantage of once we had enough spare supplies to construct another radio tower. After that, it was right back to the grind. Advent hadn't taken their loss lying down and had dedicated their own resources towards once again pushing the Avatar project forward. They were quickly undoing all of the damage we had managed to inflict on the project, and Bradford began suggesting various facilities that we could attack in the future. While some of the facilities we had located were in regions we couldn't reasonably attack yet, there was one that was smack dab in the middle of our newly expanded territory. I began working with Bradford to put together a plan of attack when Chiron and his team got back to the Avenger. They had succeeded in not only locating Mordena's lair, but also in finding a way to get inside of it. All of my other plans immediately went on hold. The Avatar project would just have to wait. For now, it was time to start channeling our resources towards this new operation, infiltrating Mordena's hideout and confronting her once and for all.